I'm Judy Stiles. Thank you for joining us this week on Newsmakers. Well, Missouri Southern's preparing to celebrate a special occasion, 50 years at the current campus location. That's our focus of today's program, and joining me, three gentlemen who help us share some of the history of the past. We have Richard Webster, Brad Belk, and Duane Hunt. Thank you for being here today.
Very happy. Pleasure.
A lot of people may, those who have been around for a while remember 1967, but we're taking some special time this year to talk about it and share that history with the community. And I guess, Brad, I'll start with you. A decision to celebrate 50 years here at Missouri Southern's current location.
Well, we've got a great celebration planned, and we're hoping that good weather accompanies us. But yes, we're going to have a great show. We're rededicating the campus on October 27th. Bill, I think if we can look at those slides, on October 27th, 28th, and 29th in 1967, they had the formal dedication of the campus. Even though the school was going strong at that point in time, I believe that's probably when Governor Hearns could be there to be part of the dedication ceremonies. But on October 29th, next slide please, this is Governor Hearns right there in the center, played a huge part in the role of the development of the college. President Billingsley on the right, or the viewers, I guess to be the viewers' right, yes, and Fred Sonato, who was the dean of students at that time. Behind them is just the very beginnings of the four buildings of the new buildings. That would be the Spiva Math Science Building, the Spiva Library, the Arts Department building, and Hearns, obviously Hearns Hall. Next slide, please. And this is basically the brains of the team that are looking at this, the architects. There's Governor Hearns with his back turned completely to us. Fred Hughes, who played an incredible role in the development here of the university, and Mr. Billingsley with the glasses to his right, Fred Hughes' right. But they're looking at the architectural drawings. MacArthur was the architect from Kansas City, and they are looking at these drawings of the future of this college, which obviously developed into a fabulous university today.
So they had the four initial buildings and said, now here's where we'd like to go from there.
Right, and they were strategically placed, and Hare and Hare laid out the grounds, landscaping firm that was familiar with this campus beforehand. They helped lay out the grounds for the Buchanan estate, which is a key component of our university
history,
today.
Right. And that's,
yes.
Reminding people of the history that this was a dairy farm area when it started, so they had some virgin land, basic land to start with.
And of course, getting this land, obtaining this land was a huge thing. They wanted $300,000 for it. There was a great question exactly what land were they going to choose, but they honed in and selected this, which was a great parcel of land for $300,000, and George Spiva kicked in $100,000 to make it happen. There's the program there. We're talking about 3 days of celebrations. They had a lunch and a dinner, and then, as I referred to, then the next slide, please, of the celebration. There it is. We're going to mimic that. We're going to stand out in front of Hearns Hall, and we've got a big day planned, some speeches made. We're going to have some relatives and former in-laws and of the former the founding fathers, and then we were going to have some refreshments and some musical entertainment as well. But there's Governor Hearns up there on that sort of cold October 29th, 1967 day, and this was a joyous occasion because they have finished the line, they have created the buildings, and they're very happy that there's something to celebrate, at which there was, of this great start of this college that, like I said, is referred to today. You wouldn't even recognize it. So a great day to remember, and we are going to rededicate it on October 27th at 10 o'clock on the grounds in the Oval at the same location.
Right, so that's open to the public just like it was then. It's
yes, we would love that. What we'd really like is a lot of buy-in from former staff, faculty, students, the public, and even if you didn't go to school here, you're sure welcome. We would like to have a good turnout. We really feel it's a very historic day and an important time for the university.
Great. Well, tying into the celebration, we have former student, former faculty joining us today, and I think for our viewers it's going to be nice to hear your stories, what it was like in 1967. We look at the pictures, and of course they're in black and white, but to envision what life was like back then at a campus that you had these brand new buildings, I don't see any trees, it was just really starting from scratch. What was it like from a student to come out here for the first time?
Oh, it was great. I had made a conscious decision because my father, who was state senator at the time, was instrumental with the legislation that established the college. And I'd made a decision that I would come to Missouri Southern for 4 years. I would get my degree here. I came from a family, my grandmother, my father's mother, was a senior English teacher in the Carthage High School. And they believed much in education. In fact, when my father was elected to the Senate, he and his mother, who was still living, who has since retired but was living, were having a conversation one day about, wouldn't it be nice if the young people in Southwest Missouri that might not have the opportunity to go to college away could have a college where they could come and get their education. And that was sort of
really a lot of people,
where
your
the
father
idea
leading
started.
that vision
Yes,
of let's have
that's
something
right.
here in Joplin for our region.
They had a vision. So I made that decision, and I graduated from the Carthage High School May the 25th of '67, and had already enrolled to be in the first group that would come on this campus. I had a little blue Ford Mustang, my first car, you know, bucket seats, stick shift. And as I told Brad in an earlier interview, you know, I would drive over here every morning. I had 8 o'clock classes. And I took 2 3-hour classes. And I remembered the 3 buildings. I was looking at the picture there. It looked like maybe the Spiva building was, the arts building was there too, maybe. I kind of saw it in the background. But I remember Hearns Hall and the Spiva Library, and what was then called the Science and Math Building. And of course they were brand new, and you walked in and you had the smell of brand new, you know, and everything was just perfect for that day. And I had an accounting class on the bottom floor of Hearns Hall, and introduction to business class, because I was going to pursue a general business degree in the downstairs of Reynolds Hall.
So they were using the buildings to their capacity
Yes,
to
they
build
were.
for classrooms.
Yes,
for
they
the
were.
students to be
That's
used
where we
sometime.
parked out in front on the original parking lot, and the infrastructure, I remember the sidewalks were there, the rails were there were sidewalks in front of the building, and you could walk all the way to the complex, to the mansion complex, you know, so it was pretty much in place, and so they were ready to go.
Great.
They were ready to go, and it was my first experience. It was, you know, it was new and different, but I remember, of course, I had a vested interest in it because of my father, but it was a great opportunity. It was a great opportunity or a privilege to be able to attend a brand new college and be in the first group. Yes.
A lot of excitement of those students. We're starting something for the future.
Yes.
From the faculty perspective, to see these students arriving on those first days and being able to greet them for these brand new buildings and facilities. And
it was quite an exciting time. It really was. Richard said that the buildings had such a new smell to them. The first building on campus that I was really concerned with had the smell of cow.
Right. So let's share that story.
Because it became eventually the Bar and Theater. I remember Dr. Billingsley told Milton Britsky and myself. Milton Britsky was the head of the theater department at the time, and we had a very active theater department. But when we moved out here, he said, "Boys, I got to tell you, there isn't the funds to build a new theater. But there are 2 barns on the campus. And if you can make a theater out of one or the other of them, it's yours." So we inspected the 2 barns and selected the one that was the sturdiest and was architecturally sound, and went to work to create a theater out of it.
So the theater faculty are working on the building.
Oh, we certainly were. This was in the spring and summer and fall of 1966. And I remember washing down walls. Students were helping too, theater students. And we were washing down walls and clearing fly specks off the ceiling. And I remember one entire day was spent shoveling cow,
what they left behind.
Out the back door, so we could get down to a level that a new flooring could be put into the barn, which eventually was. There was a young student, pre-architecture student, designed the interior of the barn for us. The university college then hired a full-time professional carpenter to help with
the
this,
construction
to
part of it,
really
right.
do most of the work. Mr. Huber, we knew him as Red Huber, and he worked mightily all the time. Milt and I, of course, once school started again in the fall of '66, we had to then go back into classes.
So you'd be in downtown campus.
But
and
we
drive
worked,
out
yeah,
here.
downtown, and then on the weekends we would roar out here to help, along with the students and with Red, and we eventually did create a theater and actually a very nice, intimate, warm theater that audiences loved to come to.
It was really a unique setting for
It really
theater
was.
production.
It was.
And then you had a special guest on the grand opening, the
Oh,
dedication.
we did. Dennis Weaver was on campus for many other activities, but that night, when in October 20th or so, when we gave the first performance at the barn, Dennis was there and his wife Jerry. There were a number of city and state dignitaries there. Dennis and Dr. Billingsley dedicated the barn theater that night.
And it continued to be used for many years, even after the Performing Arts Center was built. You still had performances.
Yes, absolutely. We returned to the barn theater for a great many shows that were more intimate, smaller productions.
Right.
We still staged them at the barn.
Yeah.
And then I read somewhere that, and tell me if I'm right or wrong, that literally the barn, the entire complex could be put on the stage of Taylor.
That is true.
So the
just
footprint
amazing.
of the barn theater is
If the
really
barn theater could have been picked up and moved,
That is amazing.
it would have sat on the stage at Taylor with room left over, as a matter of fact.
Amazing.
So the long ways things have grown
But
and
I
changed.
think I think the really critical thing from the historian's point of view is that that building's no longer there.
It is not.
It was destroyed on a fire in 1990, my understanding.
On early Thanksgiving morning, it was burned to the ground.
And the sad
almost.
thing about that is that we're talking about the rededication, and the buildings, even though the mansion has been now as the alum center or whatever,
Right.
that is
It could-
unfortunately a casualty
Yes.
that we can't go back to.
It no longer
And
exists
so
from those
it's,
early
it's
days.
so incredibly valuable and important that Duane is with us today to explain this and to tell us of something that's forgotten, but hasn't been forgotten for the people that experienced that.
The students who went through there are the ones that experienced what it was like to do theater there
Exactly,
and tying it
yeah.
together.
So it's
Great-
great
great
that,
story.
that you
Thank
were here today to explain that story.
Oh, thank you.
Richard, you mentioned your father's role. At the time, people try to envision 1967 what it took for not only community support but statewide support to say, you know, he had a dream. We'd like to have a school here in Southwest Missouri, but to get people in Jefferson City and St. Louis, everywhere was talking together and say, yes, we'll help support something like this.
Yes. It goes back to 1949, which, by the way, was the year I was born. My father, well, actually, it goes to 1948, and it's kind of amazing the way they did in those days. My father, in the summer of 1948, got married on the 3rd of July, had a semester left at the University of Missouri, and was running for state representative from Jasper County. Okay, I don't know how he did all that, but that's what he
was a
was
busy
doing.
person, right?
He was a busy person, and he was elected, and didn't think he would win, you know, but he was elected. So he went to the Missouri House in 1950, and in the House of Representatives, you have one party that sits on one side and the other party that sits on the other.
Right, kind of symbolically dividing the parties
That's
by the
right.
seats.
And my father, throughout his political career, from 1950, I think he was in the House from 50, I'm going to say to 56. I'm not sure about that. I don't really have, I was little, I don't really have any, I don't recall
The specific
him being
years,
in the
right?
House, to be honest with you. I don't, but he was. But he was never in the majority party throughout his career, up until his death. He never was. But anyway, he took office there in 1950, and he was 27 years old. And he would look at the people across the aisle from him, and he had the same kind of preconceptions. Well, that's them, and this is us. And they had to be hoodlums and
We can't talk to them, they're on the other
controlled
side of the aisle, as they say.
and are controlled by political bosses somewhere. That was the perception. So he spent the first month usually voting against everything that would come up because they controlled it all, you know. But a bill came up from a gentleman in St. Louis named Tommy Walsh. And they were voting on a piece of legislation that would raise the wages of what they called constables in St. Louis County in those days. And they were going to raise their daily wages from $9 to $10. And the Republican floor leader in the House came to my dad and said, "Kid, you probably ought to vote for that bill. You probably ought to vote for that bill." And my dad said, "Why?" He just said, "Trust me." So they took a vote, and my dad took his advice, and that bill passed by one vote. One vote. And when they were leaving the House floor, Mr. Walsh came to my dad and said, "Son, I don't know who you are, and I've never met you, but you saved me today. And I won't forget it." So the association was established. Not too long after that, whoever the political consultant was in those days for the Missouri Farm Bureau came to my dad and said, "We want you to sponsor a piece of legislation." He thought they were kidding because he was in the minority party and the other party controlled all the legislation. "Why would you want me to do that? You want me to co-sponsor it with somebody?" And he said, "No, we want you to do it." So he said, "Okay." So he presented it. It was within 24 hours. The committee that hears all of the bills called my father and said, "Be there tomorrow night."
We're gonna act
And
on
he
that.
came with this bill, and who was the chairman of that committee but Mr. Walsh? And he said, "Representative Webster, we understand you have a piece of legislation that is of significance to outstate Missourians. Would you like to present that to us, or would you like for us just to go ahead and take action?" That's exactly what he said to him. It was the first bill that never had a hearing.
Wow.
And he said, "Sir," and my father was smart enough to pick up the cue, and he said, "I trust your committee." So they took action, and it was passed unanimously. Wow. And it became law, and it was the legislation that established rural fire districts in the state of Missouri. So that somebody out in the country could use the Joplin Fire Department or the Carthage Fire Department in case of emergency. That's what it was.
Really serve the region. That we were
That's right. So those relationships were established because there was partisan cooperation.
Each side
Okay.
talked to
And in
each
the
other.
Missouri Senate, when he was elected in 1962, there was an unwritten rule that you left your political affiliation at the door when you walked into the Senate. The Missouri Senate is the only Senate chamber in the United States of America where it's not divided politically. You may have a seat here that's a Republican and a seat right next to it that's a Democrat. You don't have two aisles.
You're visiting with other people from
And that goes back to 1918. So in those days, it's become different today, and that's sad. But in those days, the political philosophy of individuals was pretty much similar in the state of Missouri. People that were of differing parties was a result of the Civil War,
the history of the state going
the
back
history of
many
the
years,
state,
right?
or the war between the states, whatever you want to call it. Okay, that's where it was. So anyway, my father had established this, and when he was elected to the Senate, the very first person that he went to was Representative Walsh, who was still in the House at that time. And he greeted him right off, and he said, "I'm elected to the Senate." He said, "We're happy you're here. Anything you all need." So anyway, that set the stage.
Set the tone for the future
That set the
cooperation.
tone. In the summer of 1963, I was called, my dad took me to Jeff City, and this was when they had extended terms, and it went through the end of June. And I got to be a page on the floor of the Missouri Senate
So you're
for a
there
month.
watching things
had
happen.
To dress, had to dress like this every day, you know, and sit
Amazing
down in front.
experience.
Anyway, and I remember there was some initial legislation that summer, and I laugh about it. I shouldn't have done it, but I would run around the floor and said, "Please vote for my dad's bill. Please vote for my dad's bill." You're not supposed to do that, but anyway, I did. But that legislation failed the first time.
And
So
you're referring to the
this was original
the college to
legislation that
be-
had to do with the establishment of the college.
Right.
Okay, the first
At the
proposal
time.
to say let's
First
start a college.
proposal, I would imagine.
Right.
I don't
Right.
remember exactly
That
what it
Dalton
was,
ended
but
up
it had to
rejecting.
do with it. It had to do with it. So I contend you could not establish a college like this today in the political environment that we're in.
The cooperation you had
But
at
it was
that time.
because of the association. And when the senators would come in, for the most part, they were interested in doing what was best for all citizens. They didn't go in with a particular agenda, you know, and they had conversations and they worked it out, and there was a lot to be said for that. So, and it was a battle then, but he had established these relationships, and they were able over a period, and of course they worked with the senator from Buchanan County, because Missouri Southern and
Right.
Missouri Western were established with the
Joseph,
same legislation
So people working together was a common theme.
on both
at that time
sides
together.
that benefited everybody.
Right.
So that had a lot to do with it. But he was very instrumental, and as a result, you
and
know.
hence we are in Webster Hall.
Webster
We are
Hall
in
recording this
Webster Hall.
program, right. Setting
And
forth the
you
future.
can see what we have today because of the vision and the cooperation of people 50 years ago, plus.
Well, I know in
over
your
50 years ago.
your current career today, you know, being an early student, you've probably seen a lot of graduates, a lot of alumni coming through the school over those years that have followed in your
Yes.
footsteps after you were the first class. A lot of
Yes.
successful stories for
Yes.
graduates.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So-
I'd say the majority of them have done fine.
Right.
Yes.
So the atmosphere of the time that you're ready to talk about the rededication, starting off with the 4 buildings and the pieces were coming together, the dream to where we are today. I'm curious, Brad, you probably can say how we've grown. There was a master plan or thinking about you know, where do
Yes.
we want to put things on this campus?
Yes,
It's a lot of
exactly,
land.
and it was strategically, the buildings were placed in a manner, and they were designed in a way that clearly almost every one of them has been added on to some degree. But obviously the oval has really taken shape, and then we talked about the vegetation and the trees, and it's just a beautiful campus. And I would assume that anyone that's ever had a part in this has got to be very, very proud. And when you hearken back to Senator Webster and his heavy lifting that made this happen, it's just an incredible story. And then you've got people still around, like Duane here, that were, what, 42 years, something like that?
Faculty member?
I was man and boy here 37 years from the junior college.
But that's the other thing of the transition from, because there was a core group, and your lovely wife Gwen's here today, and she was a part of this as well. So we've unfortunately, when you look at the, say, 85 faculty, there's not a lot around today, but their work is being appreciated. And so the idea of rededicating and having a proud moment, and think about how far we've come and what we've done and how positive this has been for Southwest Missouri is just an extraordinary story.
Well, I know we use the term points of pride, and Mr. Webster, if someone comes up to you and asks you, what's your biggest point of pride about Missouri Southern? And somebody says, what makes you proud about Missouri Southern? How do you summarize that for someone? You've been a student, you've been a community leader.
That the original vision of the school has reigned true, and that it has grown over the year and given people from all over opportunities. Not only, young people that are local, people from far off have come here, people have come from foreign countries. It's had an outreach internationally. it's just grown over the years, you know, from humble beginnings with a purpose. And I spent 6 years, I'll just mention this, I worked for 6 years at Ozark Christian College out here. And I remember the old dean out there saying that you have to keep focused on your mission. You don't want to get off in a bunch of different directions. A school like that had a particular mission, but Missouri Southern has stuck to its mission and has expanded that, has expanded out in all areas to provide that opportunity to so many people.
It's adapted as times have changed. It's
That's
grown.
right. That's exactly right. And it continues to grow.
Duane,
And it's a great asset for
for the community in
Southwest
South
Missouri, which was the original purpose.
From a faculty perspective, pride is saying that I was here, I had influence on students.
Very difficult to add much to what Richard has said, because he has beautifully stated the influence of this university on the community and the entire state, I think. Yeah, I'm very proud to have been a member of the faculty here at Missouri Southern, and I know I was extremely pleased and proud when we became a university.
Right.
Yes.
Big step taken there,
Yes.
right? Tying that together.
And you were also a junior college.
I was a junior college graduate, as a matter of fact.
So you
yes,
went through
and
the
then,
program
and
and
then
Milton Britsky was your.
Milton Britsky was my first college theater teacher.
How about that?
And then in 1963, I came back and joined him in a two-man department at Joplin Junior College. In fact, we went through 3 different name changes.
The school
In
itself as it evolved,
1963
right?
that year, yes.
Right. Well, I'd like to thank all of you for sharing your stories today. I know that the viewers are familiar with Missouri Southern. I hope they've enjoyed hearing as much as I have this great history of what we have. Brad, the date again, October 27th?
Yes, at 10 o'clock, and we're welcoming everybody, and so please come out and enjoy the festivities.
Great, and I'm sure we'll hear some more great history that day as well with our
Agreed.
community coming together.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you
Thank you,
for the
Judy.
opportunity.
And thank you, the viewers, for joining us this week for Newsmakers. I'm Judy Stiles. Hope you can join me again next week at the same time on this station. We'll see you then.